2, 1.
We're live.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our Livonia Public Schools 2021 Bond Information Night. We're happy to be joining you, and we're happy that you've joined us this evening. So I want to mention at the start of our presentation that if you have any questions while we're presenting the information this evening, please go ahead and jot them down and email them over to Mrs. Jenkins at lpsbond@livoniapublicschools.org. So lpsbond@livoniapublicschools.org. And we will be happy to answer those questions when we are through with the presentation. I'd like to introduce my colleagues who are here with me this evening. We have our Secretary of our Board of Education, Mrs. Karen Bradford.
Good evening.
Mr. Phil Francis, our Director of Operations.
Hello, everybody.
Mrs. Allison Smith, our Director of Finance.
Hi, everyone.
And Mrs. Stacy Jenkins, our Administrator of Communications. So we are pleased to share some information with you this evening, and Mrs. Smith will open up our presentation and we will go ahead and get started.
So to start us off, we wanted to look back and share some information with our community on how schools are funded. It goes back all the way to 1994 to Proposal A, and the key objectives of Proposal A were to reduce property taxes and reduce per pupil funding disparities across districts. You had some districts, with a few thousand per student, and some districts with a lot more. So the goal was to lessen that gap between districts. And Proposal A was able to accomplish these things. I shouldn't say completely accomplished, but it's definitely achieved some of that. A couple of things to note though, Proposal A was never calibrated to the actual cost of educating a student. So what happened was they determined the pot of funds that was available. They determined the number of students across the state of Michigan. They did a pretty simple formula as far as dividing the pot based on how many students they had, and that came up with what a basic foundation allowance was for each student. So that's how schools are still funded to this day. We get a per pupil amount per student, but Proposal A, again, was never calibrated to the actual cost of a student, and it actually never addressed school facilities. And so schools have two different mechanisms for raising funds to address facility needs. They can ask their community to support a sinking fund levy, or they can pass bonds. So I wanted to take a minute and explain the difference between both of those. So a sinking fund can be used for the continual upkeep of school buildings and facilities like parking lots and playgrounds. They cannot be used for staff salaries. They can't be used for textbooks. There's pretty clear-cut things that you can use the funds for. These sinking fund dollars get audited every year by an external auditor to ensure that the district is using the funds as they are allowed per law. Something unique about the sinking fund, it's used on a pay-as-you-go basis, which means when we collect the tax revenue, then we can spend the money. We don't get the money up front, so it's, again, just done as a pay-as-you-go basis. As we get the money, we spend it. In August 2019, the LPS community approved a 1.6 mil sinking fund levy for 10 years, and that generates about $7 million a year for our district. And this helps supports the district 10-year facility plan. We've identified a few main type of projects that get funded out of the sinking fund. The big three are paving, boilers, and roofs. And now with this new sinking fund that passed in 2019, we can also use it for instructional technology. And we just brought our first purchase to the board this past fall for mobile devices for our students, and we partially funded out of the sinking fund. The other way that school districts can raise funds to take care of their facilities is through requesting a bond and selling bonds. A lot of the uses overlap what the sinking fund dollars can be spent for, mainly for repairs to the buildings, for erecting or remodeling additions, for equipping school buildings. We can use it on athletic fields, playgrounds, And a difference between the bond and a sinking fund, the bond proceeds can be used for the purchase of school buses. Unlike a sinking fund, bond revenue is received up front. So we sell the bonds, we get the proceeds in, and that allows us to tackle larger projects immediately without having to wait to collect the money over time. There is a cost to that though, because we are borrowing the money up front, we do have some interest costs associated with it. But the community last passed a bond here for Livonia Public Schools back in 2013 for $195 million. Over the next couple of slides, we'll share with you what we were able to accomplish through that bond. And bonds also go to support the district's 10-year facility plan. So we wanted to share with the community what some other districts are doing as far as bond proposals go. So I'll highlight just a couple for you, some of our neighboring districts. In Novi, they went for a bond the year after Livonia, and they have already gone for a second bond in 2019. Plymouth Canton went for a bond in 2013, the same year we did, and they went for a bond in 2019. And lastly, I'll point out South Lyon, who went for a bond in 2015, and then went out for another bond in 2020. So the landscape of bond issues is changing from what we might be used to seeing, where maybe districts waited a long period of time between bonds. Some of the needs are newer to districts, such as technology. We had a large influx of technology purchases, or we were able to make a lot of technology purchases with our 2013 bond. And unfortunately, that technology doesn't last 20 years. It's normally on a 5 to 7 year cycle. So the mobile devices that we've gotten into our students' hands, the instructional technology in front of in our classrooms. So it's for that reason, I think we're seeing bonds proposals going out a little bit more frequently than what they may have done in the past. I also wanted to share some statistics with you as far as the passage rate for bonds with no millage increase, which is what we are proposing on May 4th. It would be a bond that would generate $186 million for our district, but with no tax rate increase. And when we look back on the last few years at school bond proposals without any millage increase, we see a very high support by their community. We see passage rates for the last couple of years in the 90 to 100% range. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Francis, our Director of Operations, who's going to walk through what we were able to do with our 2013 bond funds.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. The slide here is showing several items and broken out into two different overarching buckets, but we accomplished just so many wonderful renovations and updates with the 2013 bond, and all of the scope that the board at that time and that the community had authorized, and when they had passed the bond, all of that work was accomplished. And some of the most glaring aged items suddenly became just wonderful diamonds. Our classrooms across all of our buildings were renovated from top to bottom, literally top to bottom. Ceilings, lights, the flooring, paint on walls and marker boards, and of course student furniture in those classrooms was accomplished through the 2013 bond, as well as classroom technology. We're able to put interactive short throw projectors, document cameras, mobile devices, teacher workstations, meaning computers that connect up to the short throw and the document camera, sound systems, PA. Just so much good came from that 2013 bond, and we're eternally grateful for our classrooms. But beyond even the classrooms, there were many items for our students, such as we were able to purchase instructional equipment. Examples of that would be musical instruments, band instruments. We had science equipment that was purchased with it. On the renovation side, where restrooms were updated. We had main offices and other offices throughout the building. And some of the things that in the school buildings that didn't actually were the media centers, the library media centers, and the kitchens, which we'll circle back to shortly. But in the 3 high schools, we were able to actually built from scratch at Stevenson and Franklin, performing arts centers, more commonly known as theaters, but they are performing arts. And then at Churchill, completely remodeled the existing performing arts center, and those are such beautiful pieces for our students, for our community. We also had safety and security addressed during the 2013 bond. We were able to, in all of our buildings, create a secure vestibule, which did not exist before the bond. A secure vestibule is where someone from the outside would be entering into a vestibule and having to ring in for permission to get in. Our schools no longer just have unlocked front doors for just anybody to walk straight into the halls and around the building. Also on that safety and security side were the security cameras, both interior and exterior, that we put around the schools and in our buildings. Other items that were able to be accomplished with the 2013 bond, and very important, are the new school buses. Our district has about 110 school buses in its fleet of varying sizes, and we were able to replace actually a little bit more than half of those. So the included in that is also some maintenance equipment, things like floor scrubbers, etc. Items that we have not been able to replace in many, many years prior to the 2013 bond. I could clearly go on and on talking about playground equipment that we replaced and so many other items, but I think we get the point here that so much good was done with that 2013 bond. And actually, we have some pictures to share with the community. We have some before and afters at some of our buildings. This is our entry archway and secure vestibule that I had mentioned. I did not mention the entry archways, which is really a branding at all of our school buildings now, with the name of the building right in front of the main entry. We have pictures of a couple of our PACs that were mentioned on the upper left. That's Stevenson's new Performing Arts Center. And we have Churchill's Performing Arts Center in the upper middle. And then in the upper right, an example of a classroom renovated at Churchill High School. And then the bottom left, we have a classroom renovated at Stevenson High School. We have the Garfield GSRP classroom in the bottom middle with all those bright, beautiful colors for the children. And then a quick picture of Churchill's main office in the bottom right. All of these are newly renovated due to the 2013 bond. So again, from this picture, we see just other examples: flexible furniture, the playground equipment, classroom furniture for students, elementary and secondary desks, tables, different seating arrangements were able to be purchased through the 2013 bond. And like I mentioned, school buses as well. So promises made, promises kept, meaning the items that the board laid out for these construction projects and purchases with the 2013 bond were all accomplished. Unfortunately, we knew going into the 2013 bond, 100% of the scope that the district had and needed and required in our long-term facility plan could not be completed with $195 million. So much like we do with our own homes, some things are done immediately, and other projects we have to defer till later. And that's why some of these on the list were not done, only because it was a planned deferral. The LMCs, the media centers, and the rooms around them, district-wide air conditioning, we were able to change out unit ventilators and HVAC systems during the 2013 bond, but that did not include air conditioning in our learning spaces. The computer lab spaces were not addressed, along with the science lab casework and tables at our secondary buildings. We mentioned earlier, our kitchens and serving lines in most all of our school buildings are 60 to 70 years old with original equipment. We were able to replace many doors in our buildings under the 2013 bond. Within the scope, what it called for was to replace all the, what we would say, hallway doors that are on classrooms and other rooms that are leading directly to the hallway. But we have many, many, many doors and hardware that were not exchanged out. The high school field houses are about 20 years old now, and they are in need of some updates, as well as the annex buildings at those 3 high schools. And our competition gyms and locker rooms were not in the original scope of the 2013 bond, along with those pools and locker rooms at our high schools.
So you could say that the planning for the 2013 or for the 2021 bond really did start back in 2013 when, as Mr. Francis described, there were projects we knew would have to be deferred. Back at the time, there was about $275 million worth of need across our district, and a lot of discussion went on between the board and the administration on what would be an appropriate amount to ask our community for. And at the time, 275 million just felt like a really big ask, and we worked hard to identify some projects that could be deferred so that we could bring that request down to $195 million. So again, you could say the planning for this bond really did, that seed was planted back in 2013 when we knew we wouldn't be able to address all of the needs. We did discuss it again formally in 2019 when we were determining if we would go out for a sinking fund proposal. And again, we settled on 1.6 mils for our sinking fund that generates about $7 million a year for our district. And while that goes a long way, especially for the roofs, the parking lots, and the boilers, the sinking fund we knew wouldn't address some of our larger needs, like redoing the media centers, updating our kitchens and our serving lines, getting air conditioning in all of our classrooms. So we continued to have internal meetings. We formalized those meetings with the board at the tail end of 2020 when we discussed this at multiple study sessions and committee meetings. And then a final decision was made in January when the board voted on January 25th to put a question before our community as to whether they would support a $186 million bond proposal. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Francis, who's going to go over our 10-year facility plan that really helped us hone in on the requests that we're asking of the community at this time.
So I did mention this very briefly while I was speaking earlier. I said that we have a long-term facility assessment, and this is what I was referring to. Before the 2013 bond, the district had put together a long-term meaning 10-year facility assessment. So we assessed all of our buildings, all of our facilities, what's in them, what's covering them, what's around them, meaning parking lots, playground equipment, etc., as applicable. And over these years since that was created, we have continually maintained it. So we know as a district what areas in each building, which items in each building and around the district's facilities are up for a replacement, a repair, the condition they're in, what year something was replaced, so we have note of it, even if it's not having dollars allocated in the 10-year facility assessment, it still is listed in there. As an example, when we replace a roof, we will of course take the dollars out moving forward because a roof is expected to last us 20, 25 years. So it's not in the 10-year facility assessment with dollars associated with it. However, that roof and its square footage and the date of when it was repaired is still listed in there for future reference. So we continually update this, and this includes the needs throughout a building, both things that we can see as well as the items that are behind the walls and under the floors, meaning electrical, plumbing, etc. Now, what we have in front of us is a snapshot of a summary page. We take our 10-year facility assessment and we break it further into 3 different times, meaning the needs that we are projecting to need to actually accomplish within the next 3 years, so 0 to 3 years. The next column is a need that we project to be in 4 to 6 years, and a need that will come up in 7 to 10 years. So we can total out our needs across all buildings across the district as to what is the dollar amount that we project in the next 3 years, and then again in the next 4 to 6 years. And we can also do it in the next 7 to 10 years. And of course, as time moves on inflation occurs and projects generally cost more. So there is an inflationary item placed into this chart. So a plumbing job that gets done in 0 to 3 years is listed as costing less than if it is deferred 4 to 6 or 7 to 10 years. If we can move to the next. So from that document, the district can inform the board as to its needs. And we took the first 2 columns that I mentioned, added them up across all facilities, and came up with the 102 million worth of projects that need completion in the next 3 years, $108 million of projects that need completion in the next between 4 and 6 years out. In addition to the 10-year facility plan, we have a 10-year IT plan. So we took the next 6 years worth of identified needs in our technology plan, which is $29 million, add them up, and we came up with $239 million overall identified needs in the next 6 years. However, Mrs. Smith was talking earlier about the sinking fund, and we bring in $7 million annually via the sinking fund, and we have already earmarked those dollars into several major projects along with any emergency projects that come up. So we need to back out that 6 years worth of sinking fund, which is $42 million, and we come up with $197 million of additional funding needed to accomplish the needs over the next 6 years. So this is really where we start with the end in mind. We don't go out and put a bond on a ballot just to bring dollars in. We start with the need we have, and then the board can narrow down the different length of bonds and series of bonds to match the need in a fiscally conservative manner and being good stewards of the community's money.
So we'll share a few of the current considerations that our district administration and our Board of Education took a look at as we were thinking through the idea of a May 2021 no new taxes bond issue. That element of no new taxes was really a significant piece of our rationale for moving forward. We have a window of opportunity here in this particular election to take this window of opportunity where we have some debt falling off from prior bonds and have the ability to request a $186 million bond issue without any increase in the tax rate for our community. That was really a significant element for our Board of Education and for our district administration. The tax rate would remain the same, 4.1 mils, as it is now if the bond is successful on May 4th. It would remain the same for residents and businesses, but it would allow us to have a significant reinvestment in our community. We know that that reinvestment in our students and our schools and our district is a benefit to our entire community. May is that only window of opportunity that we have for a no new taxes bond issue. If we were to wait until a later date or perhaps wait for another year, we would no longer be able to request this bond issue as a no new taxes bond. Secondly, the district has a demonstrated history of strong fiscal stewardship. We have seen steady and consistent growth of our district fund balance and increased financial stability over the past several years. Recently, we were able to refund bond debt, resulting in a savings to our taxpayers of over $15 million. Proudly, we've received the highest rating on all of our district audits, including our audits of the bond, which we have had done by a separate company from our normal bond or from our normal auditors. And we have also seen an increase in our positive bond rating over the past several years. One aspect that was very important to our Board of Education was to receive a quarterly dashboard report that is shared publicly on the progress of the bond projects, the expenditures, the remaining dollars, and we presented this quarter that you see on the screen, the quarterly dashboard report in conjunction with our owner's rep and our partners at Plant Moran Cressa. This quarterly dashboard report was available not only to our Board of Education and shared publicly 4 times a year. The history of all of these quarterly dashboard reports have been housed on our district website. So our community could follow the progress, which schools, which projects, how much of the funds have we spent, which series of bonds were we in. And so this quarterly dashboard report idea is something we would certainly continue if this bond were to be successful. The last element is really taking a look at what is happening in the world of bond issues and reinvestment into schools across our neighboring districts. It's important for not only Livonia Public Schools, but for our community as a whole to remain a destination district for our families, for our staff, and for our community. We are focused on the recruitment and retention of students and the idea that in Livonia Public Schools, we lead, and the importance of thinking about growth and innovation, excellence for our schools and for our students. So we were very desirous of not only meeting the facility needs that were identified in our long-term facility plan, but also thinking future forward and what other opportunities could we provide for our students. So what are some of those projects? We've identified in our prior bond issue what projects were done, and then also some of those needs that were identified. So we've really chunked this into 3 different areas. The first is completing those previously identified projects. And so I'll highlight just a few of those. The first one is redesigning and reimagining our media centers, otherwise known as our libraries. Those are areas that were initially redesigned in, I believe, somewhere around 1990, 1991. So we're approaching library media centers that are about 30 years old. And so that was an area that we knew was going to be a focus for this upcoming bond, to really be able to think about what does the 21st century media center offer to our students? What are the needs of today's learner? What technology, collaborative spaces could we think about for those areas? We also knew that because our kitchens and serving lines in each of our schools are original to the building, that in most cases they are 50 to 60 years old. Certainly, not only are they outdated, but the efficiency and the effectiveness of their use really needs to be addressed at this point in time. Enhancing the air quality of our HVAC through our HVAC, and also adding air conditioning to our classrooms, labs, and offices where it currently does not exist is an essential component. This will allow us to not only have learning environments that are most conducive for our students, but it will also allow us to extend use of our schools into the summer months, which is not something we have the ability to do at this time. And then finally, for this section, really some of those facility improvements to which Mr. Francis referred, whether it's the behind the walls, some of the electrical and plumbing areas. Obviously, if we added air conditioning, we need to take a look at our electrical elements within each of the schools, but also some of the other elements that were not able to be addressed throughout the past years with our sinking fund or bond, such as additional classroom restrooms, doors, and hardware. The second chunk is looking at maintaining and enhancing our investment. When we talk about Livonia Public Schools having almost 3 million square feet and over 700 acres of land, that is a significant investment that we want to and have a responsibility to keep up. Technology is an area where it is forever evolving, and we have a need to see continuously updated mobile devices, classroom presentation technologies such as interactive projectors, whiteboards, short throw projectors, the computers that we utilize in the classroom, all of those elements that are both utilized by the teacher as well as the student, as well as all of those members of our staff that service the students in our district. So those technology needs, as Mr. Francis mentioned, have actually been identified with quite a bit of specificity in a separate 10-year technology assessment plan. We do have some additional furniture and instructional equipment needs. School buses and maintenance equipment are a continuous cycle for replacement. We were able to replace about 66 buses with our last bond issue. We have a fleet of about 110. So we certainly want to continue that cycle of regular upkeep and purchase of those buses. We have the need for some additional security enhancements, such as additional security cameras and the key card access readers, which allow for key card access to exterior doors into the school by members of the staff. So those are some additional elements that we are looking to address. The elementary playgrounds, we were able to identify some of those areas, but we still have additional to do. So, Mr. Francis, would you like to talk a little bit about the innovate, invite, and explore opportunities?
Absolutely. We have the majority of the dollars, as Mrs. Oquist has discussed, that if this bond passes, we would be putting towards all of these needs assessment items. But we want to make sure that we always keep one eye on the future. We are a destination district. Families want to come to Livonia Public Schools. We want to maintain that, but also continue to grow in that area, meaning what's next? What can we improve on? And what can benefit our families and our students the most? So we've got some ideas for this bond with regard to both our youngest as well as our oldest students. So a state-of-the-art early childhood center is something that would benefit our current families as well as future families, as well as families from around neighboring communities who could use the facility or perhaps even be enticed to come move into the Livonia Public Schools area. So that's something that we have just wonderful programs at Jackson, but we also have wait lists. So we want to address those needs and bring them up to the current status and need that we can meet. In addition to that, we have some of our oldest learners, meaning our 11th and 12th grade students at the Livonia Career Technical Center. That is a fantastic career technical center, and Livonia Public Schools is really, truly lucky to have its own CTE building with its programs housed there. Many districts do not have them, and in other counties, students from all around the county have to go to one or two buildings somewhere very far away, perhaps from their home school, to attend a career technical center. Livonia Public Schools has its very own. And to that end, we have students who are incredibly interested in programs like criminal justice and medical assistant and med tech. There are career paths that students are eager to get involved with, but we just don't have the space for every student who may want that. So we'd like to address that issue as best as possible with these bond dollars. And then in between, we have the STEM program and science technology. Oh my gosh, somebody help me with the E. I can't believe I just blanked on it. Engineering, sorry, and math. A lot of programs. We have the project Lead the Way as our curriculum, which is the gold standard in STEM curriculum for our middle school and high school students who aren't at the Career Technical Center. And we want to be able to incorporate all of that type of learning using these bond dollars to expand opportunities for students. And last but certainly not least, we have an award-winning robotics program in the district that grows every year. And we want to make sure that we build a proper or find a proper home for that robotics program. Currently, they are working in the Dickinson Center, which is old and not an ideal situation. So we do want to address the growth and success of that program by finding them a home.
With that, we wanted to give you a look at the ballot language, and I know this is a lot of words on the screen. If you would like to see this, you can find it on our website in the bond section in our FAQ document. But you may wonder, couldn't this be spelled out a little bit more clearly in the ballot language? And it's written this way because we worked with our attorneys to make sure that it's written in the way that's required by the law. So that's why we've broken out these little boxes to the right to give you a clear understanding of exactly what the intention of is in each section. So that top section is meant to explain that we're looking to sell bonds to raise $186 million for identified projects. That next section explains how we will use those funds. So primarily used for upgrading, an upgrade to safety and technology, to improve and expand facilities and program spaces for academic success, and then to upgrade playground and athletic facilities. And then at the bottom, it's the informational section, and the big takeaway there for you is that this is a 0 mil rate increase. So our debt levy currently is 4.1 mils. If this passes, it will remain 4.1 mils. So your tax rate will not change if the bond passes. And I also want to reiterate that the bond funds can only be used for physical improvements and can't be used for salaries, maintenance, or repair of the facilities. So again, this can't be used for staff salaries or textbooks. It has a very specific use. And again, we have external auditors that come in every year to comb through our expenditures to make sure that they're in line with what the law intended them to be spent on.
So we are at the close of our formal presentation this evening. I wanted to offer the opportunity for Trustee Bradford, if there's anything you wanted to add about the board's deliberation on the bond or any additional information. Otherwise, we'll check with Mrs. Jenkins and see if any questions have come our way.
Sure, thank you, Mrs. Oquist. I would just like to say, I'm really proud of the work that we've done in Livonia Public Schools and all of the time that we've spent to be good stewards of our money. I think this is a great opportunity for our district to continue to move forward and to give our students the best educational opportunities that we're able to. And like Mr. Francis said, we are just thankful for our Livonia voters and our community that they passed the 2013 bond, and just are thrilled to see all of the upgrades and everything that we did to make our schools just flourish and a kind of a revamping. So I think it is prudent for us to go ahead and go for this bond. And I just want to thank the voters, for their support of us. We do need strong schools build strong communities, and I stand by that. I think our board stands by that 100%, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue that in the future.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. Mrs. Jenkins, do we have any questions from our community that have come in this evening?
No, pretty quiet this evening. No questions have come in, but I would like to remind our viewers that all of the information that was covered here tonight and more, including a frequently asked questions document, is located on our website at livoniapublicschools.org/2021 bond.
So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And as Mrs. Jenkins mentioned, please be sure to check our website for more information. That also does include the email address. We welcome your questions, your ideas, your input. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. And again, thank you for spending time with us this evening, and good night.